everybody, and welcome to our fourth video in our series of At Home in the Woods with Miscellaneous Adventures. Today is all about axes. I'm going to do some axe safety, some axe technique, some axe selection, and some tips and tricks on how to use your axe. We hope you'll enjoy it. As ever, just send us a comment or a message if there's something you'd like us to cover that we haven't already, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks very much. Enjoy!
So following on from our tool introduction and tool sharpening videos, we're going to start taking a look at the tools we use in more detail, starting with the axe. So the axe is central to everything that we do here at Miscellaneous Adventures. We use one every day in the woods for splitting firewood, for our conservation and forestry work. We use them for making our products, and we always take one with us when we're hiking or camping. They're a super useful, efficient tool to use. If you use them properly, then it's a great tool. If you use one badly, then it can be really, really dangerous. So we're going to start off with some safety advice. One of the most important safety tips is to make sure that you keep your axe sharp at all times. Having gone to the trouble of sharpening it, like in our sharpening video, you need to make sure that you keep it sharp. A blunt axe will tend to skip off wood rather than dig into it, which means that it could fly anywhere, makes it dangerous. So one way of making sure that your axe stays sharp is by keeping it in its leather sheath when you're not using it. You just want to make sure that your sheath is clean as well, it doesn't have any mud or grit in it, so you need to look after the sheath too. You also want to make sure that when you're chopping firewood or splitting firewood, that you're only chopping onto a wooden chopping block, something like this, on this. If your axe goes straight into the ground, it's going to be blunt almost immediately, and then it won't be good for anything else after that. So you only chop if you know you've got a decent chopping block available. You also just need to look after the axe in general, so you need to stop it from becoming rusty by cleaning it before you put it back in its sheath. You can also oil it occasionally with like WD-40 or something like that to stop it from rusting. And you also want to make sure that the head doesn't come loose on the handle. So if that happens, you need to replace the handle as soon as you can. So just looking after the axe in general is a good way to stay safe. Before you use an axe, you need to make sure that you can reach up and around you without touching anything or anyone. So with the sheath on, just reach up and around, make sure you don't bash into anything. That's just so that if you don't hit the axe on anything when you start chopping. If you have a branch up above you and you take a swing and the axe gets stuck in it and then comes down on your head, you're going to be having a really bad day. So yeah, make sure you can do that. You should never use an axe in low light, which means that you should always do all your firewood splitting or anything long before it starts to get dark. You should never use one when you've been drinking, and you should just generally apply some common sense when you're using an axe. You also make sure that you've got a first aid kit available before you start using an axe too. We've covered this in our first video, so have a look at that if you haven't seen one already. But I really recommend having a first aid kit to hand, and also making sure that you know what's in your first aid kit as well. So have a good look through, and ideally you want to have some first aid training too, so that you know how to use all the stuff that's in there. So that covers some basic safety techniques. Next we're going to have a look at the axes that we use and what you might want to use them for. So the first one, and this is the one that we recommended in our tool introduction video, this is the wildlife hatchet. So this one is really designed to be used with one hand. That makes it really brilliant for wood carving. So this is the one that we use on our wood carving videos, wood carving workshops. So you can use this with one hand for chopping like this, for hewing. It's nice and light, it's really great if you're just starting out with wood carving. They come really sharp from the factory as well, so you don't have to sharpen them the first time you use them, which is nice. They're really well made. And these are really compact, so they're ideal for putting in your rucksack for camping or hiking. They're only light, but you can still do quite a lot with them. They're great for splitting kindling and for small bits of firewood. They're excellent for making things, but their small size does mean that they're only limited to small bits of work really. You couldn't fell a tree or anything like that with one of these, not efficiently anyway. These also have a unique safety issue. So because they're designed to be used with one hand, you need to think about where your other hand is at all times. Because these are short as well, you have to make sure that when you use one, you either have a very tall chopping block like this, so that if you missed a piece of wood, it doesn't go into your leg, or if you're working on a low chopping block, that you get down on the ground like this and chop down into the chopping block like this. And that way you make sure that when you're swinging and you miss, the axe doesn't go into your leg. So that's a particular thing that you have to bear in mind with these short axes. So that's the wildlife hatchet. Next up from that is a small forest axe. If I had to pick one axe, this would be the one that I would use. This is still light enough that you can use it with one hand, especially if you had a bit of experience. But yet the handle is long enough that you can use it with two hands as well. So you can quite comfortably fell medium-sized trees with this. So we use this one here in the woods all the time for felling small trees or limbing small trees. We use it for coppicing, all sorts of stuff. I'll also use these for making things sometimes as well. So for making cups or something a bit bigger than spoons, for example, where you want to remove a lot of wood. I really like this. This is also just about small enough to put in your rucksack when you're camping or hiking or for taking with you. So yeah, you can still just about carry it around with you, not too heavy. This has a slightly longer handle, but it's still quite short. So if we were splitting a piece of wood on this log, there's a chance that you could miss that and it would go into your leg. So I still prefer to kneel down when I'm using a small forest axe. That way you can chop quite comfortably without worrying about the axe going into your leg. So that's a small forest axe, which is an ideal all-rounder. If you only had to choose one, this is the one that I would use. Going up from that, you have another axe. This one is called the Scandinavian forest axe, all made by the same company, by Brooks. This one is really designed to only be used with two hands, although you can use it with one if you have a bit of strength. It's kind of almost too big to make things with, but you can still do it. This one is really far too big to be taking camping or hiking. There's absolutely no need to take a large axe with you if you're camping or hiking. This is great for felling decent sized trees and for splitting decent sized bits of firewood, which you don't really need to be doing if you're going hiking or camping or into the wilderness. Small axe like that is just fine. We do use this one at home though for felling slightly larger trees and for limbing the branches off. Because it's long, you can work at a really comfortable height. So this is a really great tool for woodland work. And you can use it for splitting slightly larger bits of wood as well for splitting firewood. So this is a really nice tool, but it's probably one that's best left at home. And next up from that, well, there's another one in between this and that as well. There's an American felling axe. But again, the clue's in the name, it's a felling axe. So for felling larger trees. So it's not really something that you need to do very often. So the next one that we use a lot is this. This is a splitting maul. This one is designed just for one thing. This is only meant for splitting larger bits of firewood. No good for felling trees, no good for making anything, but it has this really fat head on it, and then the sharp bit goes into the axe, and the width splits open wood. It's very heavy, but the idea is that you use the weight of the axe to do the work for you, so it makes it a really efficient tool. And we split a lot of firewood here at home. We split it for ourselves, and we also split it for our landlord. So we go through a lot of firewood, and we use this for all of it. So the way you use this, Emma?
Yeah.
Emma's just going to show you how to use this. So we're going to split this nice big chunk of ash here, pop it on the chopping block like this, and then
Thank you.
you just use the weight of the head of the axe, so you just lift it up straight in front of you, and then it should split that with no trouble. perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that is the splitting board. So that's an introduction to the 4 axes that we use the most here in the woods and when we're out and about. So now we're going to go on to some techniques. Next we're going to have a look at some basic axe techniques. So before we get on to making anything, like doing spoon carving or bowl carving or anything, we're just going to run through some basic techniques. These are going to be things that are going to be helpful to you if you're splitting firewood as well as making things, or if you're camping or hiking. So I think this is really useful, fundamental stuff that people should know. So we're going to start off with just splitting some smaller bits of wood for kindling, really. So something like this, for example, this is ideal wood for kindling. This is kind of, we'll always split our firewood, so it burns much better if it's been split, and it's much easier to make a nice fire as well if your wood is not round like this, stops it from rolling around. So we're going to split something like this in half. This is too small really to stand up and split properly. You see a lot of people, they would put their fingers on top of a piece of wood like this and then swing and then move their fingers out of the way at the last minute, and that's a really, really dangerous way to do it. It doesn't take much for you to miss and cut through your finger. An axe as sharp as this will just chop the finger straight off, so we think it's better to kind of find a safer alternative. Our favourite way of splitting small bits of firewood for kindling, it's really easy, it's really safe, there's no swinging or anything involved, it's a really good technique. So what we're going to do is take the blade of the axe, cutting bit, just rest it on the tip like that, so that it gets stuck in. And then raise the axe and the piece of wood up together, bring them down on the chopping block once, and then just give it a little twist like that. And you have 2 nice clean halves like that. Really safe, and very controlled as well. So you can split that again, the same way, into quarters. And you can even go again. In fact, you can keep going. This is a great way to turn a log into kindling. If you have something as small as this, you've almost got everything you need to get your fire started. That's a really nice technique. This works best with straight pieces of wood without too many knots in them, and really only works with quite small diameter bits of wood. If you do have a knot in the piece of wood, so this bit of wood here has got a knot in it, this is a growth where a branch has been growing out of. So you want to make sure that the knot is at the far end from the split. So we're going to go at the opposite end from where we're starting our split. And that way the split will have started by the time it gets to the wood, by the time it gets to the knot, sorry. And also you want to make sure that the split is in line with the knot rather than to the side. And that way the split will come up here and it will split around the knot. So we'll give that a go now. And twist. That's it. Easy. So that's a really nice way of splitting small bits of firewood. A quick safety tip on that is if you get the axe stuck, don't try and apply too much force to get the axe out. All you have to do is pump the axe gently, like that, and it will come out. If you apply too much force with an axe, at some point the axe is going to release and it will come flying out. So everything has to be nice and controlled and nice and calm. You should never really use too much force when you're using an axe. So another really great thing about this technique is that you can use it if you don't have a flat chopping block available. You can just use a large fallen branch or a stump that you might find in the woods. So this is ideal if you're out camping and you don't have access to a decent flat chopping block. So that's our favourite way to split small bits of firewood for kindling. Moving up from that, if you have to split anything a bit bigger, you can use a small chopping block like this. And we're going to split something something like this, a slightly larger piece of wood. So there are a couple of different ways that you can do this as well. So using this small axe, the wildlife hatchet, like we mentioned in the safety intro, if I swing at this standing up and I miss, the axe is going to go into my leg. So we can come down and split with one hand onto this chopping block. The piece of wood should be at the far end of the chopping block, just in case you miss. The axe will go into the chopping block and not swing straight past into your leg again. You can just lift this up with one hand really easily and just pop down the middle like that. That's the kind of classic way of splitting a piece of wood that size with a small axe. So another way of splitting a piece of wood like this with this small axe is by using another piece of wood as a batten and hitting the top of the axe. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. This is a really safe and controlled way of splitting firewood. And this is the way that we would split wood if we were going to make something out of it. So where we want control. If we want to split a piece of wood exactly in half, this is an ideal way to do it. So I'm going to split this bit across here. I'm going to place the axe in my non-dominant hand. So I'm going to put this in my left hand because I'm normally right-handed. I'm going to place the axe like this, so it'll be going across my body. And then I'm going to use another chunk of wood like this and just hit the axe on top. And go through like that. And the axe is facing in this direction, so that when the split is finished, the axe goes out like this, not towards me. Really, really safe, very, very controlled method of splitting wood. Next we're going to have a quick look at splitting some slightly bigger bits of wood. We're going to use a slightly bigger axe for this. We're going to use a small forest axe so we can use two hands. So when you're splitting larger pieces of wood, you need to make sure that the bit of wood that you're splitting is on the far side of the chopping block, just like with the small axe, so that if you miss, the axe is going to go into the block and not into your leg. I'm going to split this piece of birch here. We're going to probably do a whole video on wood splitting because, believe it or not, we've got enough to say about that we could take a whole video on it. But one of the keys to splitting wood successfully is being able to read a piece of wood, so to be able to understand what's going to happen when you split it. And that means paying attention to the direction of the grain and also to where any knots are. So we're going to split this piece of birch, has got a knot in it here. So I'm going to make sure that my split goes in line with this knot. That's going to make it much easier. I'm going to put that there. And then again, I'm going to come down on my knees. And then you raise the axe with your hand here, and you just bring it up and then slide it down the handle and then pop down right in the middle. You want to split the piece of wood radially, so from the center you want to divide the piece of wood up radially into segments, a bit like a pizza, and split across those segments. So again, we're going to cover more on that in a future video. It's quite simple, not too much energy or effort should go into it, and straight up. So this is good, this happens quite a lot. If the axe gets stuck like this in the top, you can either try and free it, or you can turn the piece of wood and the axe upside down and bring the two down together on the chopping block like this. Which is a really nice, efficient way of splitting firewood because you're using the weight of the piece of wood. And that's it. So next we're going to look at one of the techniques that we use when we're making stuff. This is called hewing. This is kind of a fundamental technique when you're trying to make anything from a piece of wood. It's really good for flattening out pieces of wood before you start making things. It's also good just for making flat surfaces, like if you needed to make a chopping board or something in the woods, or for making a canoe paddle, or for making skis, or for the first couple of stages of making a spoon or a cup or a bowl. So I'm going to show you that. I've got a piece of cherry here, and I'm just going to show you what hewing looks like. The basic technique is that you use the axe in this kind of light chopping motion. So it's kind of in a circular motion, a bit like a woodpecker chopping against a tree. All the tools that we use work best when they slice through fibres rather than push. So we're not pushing down, we're slicing across. Only ever work halfway up a piece of wood so that you don't get too close to your fingers, and turn it back round and work down the other way. The axe moves straight up and down. And if you need to move anything, then you tilt the wood to adjust the angle of how the axe penetrates the wood. When you're chopping, you want to make sure that your thumb is not hooked over the top of the piece of wood, so you don't chop it off. And also that your fingers don't creep round the sides like this, because again, it'd be really easy to have an accident. Generally though, don't lift the axe any higher than your hand. That way, even if you miss, it won't be too bad. I've got a nice high chopping block here, but in the woods it's unlikely that you're going to find anything like that. So you can use a lower chopping block like this, or even a large branch which is on its side, like a large chunk of wood that you find. Go down on your knees and work like this. I like to work slightly at an angle when I'm down low, so that if I miss the chopping block completely, the axe will go straight past me and not into my leg. And so that's it. That's the first stage usually in making something. So once you've split a piece of wood and you want to smooth it out before making something, this is what you would do. You'd use hewing. So one more technique I want to show you is how to use an axe to carve what's called the feather sticks. The feather sticks are a really neat way of lighting a fire, and they involve shaving a split piece of wood. Then you can light those with a match. It's a really great way to start a campfire. It's easier to do with a knife, but you can do them with an axe. I just want to show you a little trick that I learned a little while ago. So first we're going to split a piece of dry wood into smaller pieces using the splitting technique that I showed you before earlier. Split this into nice thin pieces. You get small pieces like this, and often what I've seen people do or try to do is to carve a feather stick with the axe and use it in the same way that you would a knife. And because the axe is heavy, it's quite difficult to do, especially if your axe is not sharp enough. So your curls keep sort of flying off like that. The idea is to keep them on the piece of wood. So a trick that I learned a little while ago was to knock the axe into a chopping block like that, and then rather than use the axe, move the axe, you pull the piece of wood down here and you pull the piece of wood towards you, and that way you can get really nice curls and they stay on the piece of wood like this. You turn the piece of wood around 180 degrees so you have curls forming on all sides. This is a really nice controlled way of shaving wood. That's not the best one I've ever made, which typically wouldn't be because it's on video. But yeah, if you can make a whole bunch of these, they make brilliant brilliant kindling and tinder for starting a fire. You have about 6 of them piled on top of each other, just light the base with a match or a lighter and you're away. So yeah, using an axe and some simple splitting techniques, you can have everything that you need to light your campfire. So I think that's everything for this video. Hope that's been helpful. I'm sure there's lots more that we could go into with the axe, and I think in time we'll do a full video on axe carving. But we just wanted to show you some basic techniques and some interesting things that you might not have known about axes. If there's anything that you want to know, or anything that we haven't covered, or anything that you'd like to show us, then please let us know. And yeah, thanks for watching. Just make sure if you're using one of these that you stay safe. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.